It's my pleasure to welcome you to the second California Water Colloquium of the term. As you probably know, Professor Narasimhan originated this series. There's a faculty committee that runs it, and it's actually, most of the work is done by Linda Vida and her staff in the Water Resources Center archives. So thanks for coming and joining us today. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Marty Griffin. I first got to know Marty through giving some testimony for some of the environmental groups on the Russian River dealing with gravel mine issues. And Marty invited me to bring my class to his hop kiln winery, which was a pretty winning combination, I thought. And anyway, we've been coming every year to look at the Russian River there and to have lunch on Marty's porch to hear the history of the gravel wars on the Russian River. So one great thing about doing this kind of introduction is you get these biographical details that you never knew before. So I'll start by pointing out that Marty is a bear. He graduated from Cal with a degree in zoology in 1942. And then he didn't show quite such good judgment. He got his medical degree at Stanford in 46. But he made up for it by serving as a captain of the U.S. Army Medical Corps at the end of the Second World War, and then practiced medicine in Marin County for 17 years, helping to start the Ross Valley Clinic, Ross General Hospital, and other medical centers. In 1961, he helped launch the Audubon Canyon Ranch, which grew to include wildlife sanctuaries at Bolinas Lagoon, Tomales Bay, and Sonoma Creek. He also helped establish a wildlife preserve in Hawaii, and he was a co-founder of the Environmental Forum of Marin, and in 1973 elected a director of the Marin Municipal Water District. He earned his master's in public health at UC School of Public Health in 1972, served as public health director at Sonoma State Hospital for 15 years. In 1980, he was appointed chief of hepatitis B and later the AIDS task force for the 11 California state hospitals, and received the governor's award for his successful hepatitis B immunization program upon retirement. So we're here actually to talk about some of Marty's other contributions and hear about those. Well, first, in 1975, he founded the Hop Kiln Winery on the Russian River, close to Healdsburg. And he founded the Russian River Task Force in 1990, the Russian River Environmental Forum, and co-founded Friends of the Russian River. And in 1990, he established a riparian preserve on his ranch, the Griffin Russian River Riparian Preserve. So Marty has been very active in bringing attention to the problems of gravel mining on the Russian River. And that's, of course, what we'll hear about today. His role in coastal preservation, though, might be better known to many of you. He's the author of this book, Saving the Marin-Sonoma Coast. And like all good entertainers, usually you come and give a concert, you have a CD for sale. There are a few copies of this book available as well. And if we run out of them here, it's not so bad to go to the Hop Kiln Winery. They're also for sale there, and I'm sure other places. Okay, so just a couple of logistical notes. There are some sign-in sheets going around. Please sign in. And the videotapes for these talks are also available on the WRCA website in streaming video. Of course, it's much better that you're here in person, but just so you know for the future. So it's a great pleasure to welcome you, Marty, to the Water Colloquium. Thanks for coming.
Can you hear me? Well, I never expected to stand before a class in engineering and talk about gravel mining, because I was trained to be a physician, and in 1961 I bought a ranch on the Russian River, and I couldn't have bought a ranch in the worst place in the world. It was right next to the Russian River and what they call the middle reach between Healdsburg and Forestville, And it's a 9-mile stretch of river called the Middle Reach. And it turned out to be one of the largest gravel mining operations in California going on when I bought the ranch. Anyway, I was thrilled with this piece of property because it had a stream going down through it that had spawning coho salmon in it. And I went up there one afternoon to look at the ranch. It was during a driving rainstorm, and the whole creek had slid into a giant gravel pit down in the Russian River. It had widened overnight from maybe 15 feet wide to 100 feet wide and deepened down to 22 feet. And my wells were taken out, the power was knocked out, and the fishery was destroyed for the next 30, 40 years. So that made me pretty angry. And I determined then to do what I could to bring gravel mining on the Russian River under control. There were a bunch of other winery owners and vineyard owners up Dry Creek and up the Russian River. We banded together and sued the county and the mining firms, and we won that case in the state Supreme Court. And the county was required to do what they call an ARM plan, an aggregate resource management plan. And this is a single-purpose plan to extract the most gravel they possibly can from the Russian River. It was not a river management plan, although they sort of made it look like one. I worked on that plan real hard and was able to get the county to set aside the west side of the Russian River as a groundwater recharge preserve, because this is one of the great aquifers of the state. And I thought, well, my job is done. But then about 5 or 6 years after the plan was in operation, the county supervisors who manage the water agency and also handle gravel permits decided they would open up the west side of the river to gravel mining. Well, that triggered another lawsuit, and this time we got 15 winery owners involved, called the Russian River Task Force, and we hired a female attorney who was very much in love with the Russian River and had a lot of passion and scared the heck out of the mining firms. And we won that lawsuit in the county Superior Court and stopped the mining. And a new ARM plan was done, which cost the mining firms $1 million. And some of the slides I'm going to show you today will portray the battle and some of the struggles that we had to try and bring gravel mining under control in the Russian River. Before 1980, there were no rules whatsoever for mining. If you owned the land, you could mine it. And they called it skimming gravel. Well, they'd skim 55 feet deep, and they skimmed all the way from Healdsburg down to the Wohler Bridge, 55 feet deep. So I think we'll show you some slides. By the way, this book that I wrote, about a third of it is devoted to the gravel mining wars that we went through. And actually, these people weren't mining gravel, they were mining the water. They were mining the water supply for 600,000 people. And that's been our big ace in the hole, but the county sort of ignores the importance of protecting these gravel aquifers. I got into this battle because I love fish, and I love fishing, and this is a picture of what we've lost in California and Oregon and Washington, these magnificent runs of spawning steelhead and salmon that use the gravel-bedded rivers. These are gravel-bedded rivers all along the coast of California, and the gravel and boulders are essential as fish habitat. And this is on the Elwha River in Washington. The dam was built that blocked the flow of gravel and also blocked the return of steelhead. But Washington State is about to take down this dam. Next. Next. This is on the Russian River. The Indians used these gravel bars for hunting and fishing, and they were teeming with life. And this was taken in 1910. Next. My dad and I fished the rivers of the North Coast, and this is on the Klamath River. And these gravel cobbles, as they called, or cobbles, are essential habitat for steelhead and salmon. These are little steelhead. Next. This is on the Russian River, and one of the criteria that's necessary to prove in defending a river is whether it's navigable or not. And the mining firms have always said that the Russian River wasn't navigable, but a lawsuit by a canoe outfit was won, and this upper river, the Russian River, is declared navigable. Next. We were always discouraged to go to a stream that we'd fished in the past and find the bulldozers in there taking out the gravel and ruining the river for years to come. This is one of the little coastal rivers. I think it was the Garcia. Next. This is showing mining at its largest, and this is on the Russian River just below Healdsburg. This is a giant gravel pit owned by Syar Industries. You can see the big crane there. The drag line is dripping water, so you know that this is wet gravel. That means that it's being taken out of an aquifer. And this is the Middle Reach Aquifer that supplies drinking water for 600,000 people. It filters the drinking water. The gravel filters it, it stores it, and transports it underground. Next. This shows all the mining sites along the Russian River until about 10 or 12 years ago. And there's mining up at Ukiah, and then from the Mendocino border on down to our ranch. And our ranch is just above the Wohler Bridge, and where it's called the Middle Reach. And these are both in-stream and terrace mining sites. Terrace means floodplain mining, and in-stream they call it skimming, but it's really, they just mine the gravel bars as deep as they dare. The watershed to the right there that says Santa Cruz Creek is the largest watershed on the Russian River, and the site of most of the construction that goes on in Sonoma County. There are two dams on the river, one on Dry Creek called Warm Springs Dam, and another up at Mendocino, Lake Mendocino, called Coyote Dam. Next. This shows, by the way, all of the erosion. The mining causes tremendous erosion, along with other things that happen along the Russian River, like logging and agricultural conversion. Next. This is the mouth of the Russian River at Jenner, with showing the tremendous amount of erosion. That something like 1.5 million tons of eroded sediment comes down this river every average winter. That's about 1 to 2 tons for every person, the average in Sonoma County. Next. This shows that mining is statewide, and gravel mining. Gravel, as you know, is essential ingredient for development of every sort. It's used in roads and buildings and churches and schools and patios, and practically it's the most mined product, heavily mined product in the state of California, much more valuable than gold. The larger triangles are the larger mining sites. Number 25 is the Russian River. 13 19 is the Mad River, and 13 is the mouth of the Eel. Yeah. I wrote this book because I was deeply involved in the battles to try and stop a freeway in Marin County while I was practicing medicine there. And I helped establish two great wildlife preserves in Marin County, Audubon Canyon Ranch, the Bolinas Preserve and the Tomales Bay Preserve. And our battles, I think, stopped the freeway and helped save the development of Point Reyes National Seashore. And then about a third of the book is devoted to the battles for the Russian River. Next. This is the first load of gravel taken from the Russian River to help build the Golden Gate Bridge. And this is where the gravel comes from. This is Sayre's processing plant right here. And it's across the river from the main part of Healdsburg, but it's in the city limits, sort of a non-conforming permit. And Sayre claims to have vested rights to mine for about 4 or 5 miles upriver or more, and downriver for about 5 miles. They're also mining these terrace pits, and there's only one other mining firm on the Middle Reach now. That's Hanson Limited, and they're about out of places to mine. So Sayre is the only mining firm left. Next. The threats to Marin and Sonoma County were the largest nuclear reactor ever to be built at Bodega Head, and a large dredge marina on Bolinas Lagoon, and 200 miles of coastal freeways connectors, all of which were going to take a lot of gravel. Warm Springs Dam on the Russian River, and large pipelines to deliver unlimited Eel River water. And I'll tell you how the Eel River is connected to the Russian by a little tunnel. And the Sonoma County Water Agency, which runs in charge of the Russian River water supply, sells its water to 9 different contractors, and they're a wholesaler of water. The more water they sell, the more money they make. And here's what's called the hole in the head at Bodega Head. Maybe you've seen this monstrosity. This was going to be a huge nuclear plant back in 1962, but public outcry finally stopped it. The PG&E, which was building it, didn't realize that it was on the San Andreas fault line. Or if they did, they thought that it would be harmless. Next. The freeways that were planned for the Marin coast were going to equal those of Southern California. Here's some of the alternate routes from the Golden Gate Bridge up to Stinson Beach, and then into along the shore of Bolinas Lagoon, then up into Tomales Bay, and on and up into Sonoma County. Next. And this was going to be the largest city in Marin and Sonoma County. It was approved twice by the Board of Supervisors of Marin County. And it's on the east shore of Tomales Bay, opposite the Point Reyes National Seashore, which was authorized by President Kennedy in 1962, but wasn't completed. The purchase of it wasn't completed until 1972 or 1973. And in the meantime, these tremendous subdivisions were planned for the east shore of Tomales Bay. This was for 150,000 people. And this is a 4-color master plan, and once one of these plans gets approved by the Board of Supervisors, it's very hard to break it or to stop it or to reverse it. But Marin County was able to kill this whole plan, and I think that part of it was because our Audubon Canyon Ranch endeavored to buy up as much of the freeway, which you see along there, Highway 1, was successful. And then also a big revolution occurred in Marin County over water. And the people of Marin County decided they didn't want Russian River water, and they didn't want the growth that would come with it. And they voted it down twice, 9-1. Next. This is the water transmission pipelines that come from the Russian River. About 3 miles downriver from our ranch is the Wohler Bridge, and above it are 2 huge water collectors, and below it are 3 more called Rainy collectors. I'll show you a picture of them. But the solid lines are the existing pipelines from the Russian River, and they supply the towns of Sonoma and Santa Rosa and Novato, and there's a little pipeline that goes down into Marin. The dotted lines were lines that were proposed if the nuclear reactor had been built at Bodega Bay, and if this tremendous subdivision had been built on the east shore of Tomales Bay. There were pipelines that would have gone up the coast and down the coast and across the county from Cotati to Bodega Bay. Next. This is, I got myself elected to the board of directors of the Marin Municipal Water District, probably the stupidest thing I ever did. And it was a hassle from beginning to end. That our electorate voted 9-1 twice to not hook up to Russian River water. So next. So our board of directors voted to prevent any more hookups in Marin until we found a new source of water that was in our own watersheds. And here I am way over on your left. And it was a very tumultuous time, but our moratorium held, and there was no development to speak of in southern Marin, which had 10 of the 11 cities for about 5 or 6 years. Here's the Russian River Water Plan, which I was well acquainted with, being on the board of Marin County Water District. And the Sonoma-Marin Aqueduct is what they voted down. And here are the big rainy collectors at the Wohler Bridge that suck water out of the gravel. It's crystal clear water, the purest water you'd ever want to have. Doesn't need any treatment whatsoever after it goes through 60 feet of gravel. And then the river on the right from the Coyote Dam for 60 miles down to these collectors is designated as a municipal conduit for a water supply. But it has all this gravel mining in it, so it's a conflict. Next. Here's the official Russian River Water Plan, and up at the top is the connections with the Eel River. I have some more detailed picture of that, but the main stem of the Eel River was diverted into the Russian River back in 1908 when somebody built a little hydroelectric tunnel through a range of mountains and diverted an incredible amount of water into the east fork of the Russian River. And then later on it was regulated by Coyote Dam and Lake Mendocino up on the top there. This shows the connection between the Eel River and the Russian River. An awful lot of water that's being used for development and being sold by the Sonoma County Water Agency is called abandoned water. It doesn't actually belong to Sonoma County. It belongs to Humboldt County and Mendocino County, but it's diverted through this little tunnel, and the Cape Horn Dam stores the water, and Scott Dam above it helps store water from the Eel, and then it goes into the Russian. It's caused tremendous damage to both rivers, this diversion. It's too much water down the Russian and too little down the main stem of the Eel. It's killed the fisheries of both rivers, and we have lawsuits going right now to try and end this diversion and to take down Scott Dam. Here's the people who run the Sonoma County Water Agency, and this is the Board of Supervisors of Sonoma County. The faces change each year, but their policies stay the same. And generally they favor gravel mining over water supply. And they say we got plenty of water, we just need more gravel for construction. And the man on the left there, Supervisor Esposti, was called the gravel czar. And here's what they're in charge of, one of the great aquifers of the world. This is the Middle Reach Aquifer, and the darker area is the main storage area of gravel and sand and silt. And there's an underground river flowing through it that I've never been able to figure out exactly how fast it flows, but it's probably only 20 or 40 feet a day. But it's generally headed toward the right or downriver, and it flows through miles of gravel, which has two main effects. It provides mechanical cleansing of the water and also biological cleansing of the water, because there are hundreds of species of organisms that live in the gravel and between the gravel and between the big cobbles. And this is a whole unstudied ecosystem underwater in rivers that provides magnificent filtration for drinking water. But that whole system is being destroyed by gigantic gravel pits and in-stream mining and massive siltation. Our ranch, go back to that one once more. Our ranch is, show it where it is, Joyce. Down to the right there. I can figure out how to work this. Oh, here, I got it. Our ranch is right here. Here's Sweetwater Springs Road. And here's our little creek that comes down through it. It's not a very big creek. And then here's the river that was heavily mined back in the 1960s, 55 feet deep. Here's a block in the Coast Range called the Wohler Constriction, a very hard rock. And that's created this basin. 11,000 years ago, this was a deep valley. And then at the end of the Ice Age, it filled up with silt and gravel and created this aquifer. And this is just a big, wonderful bathtub of water and gravel and sand. These are harder rocks. You can put a well into these areas and you wouldn't get any water. Same over here, same up here. And this whole area, this is Dry Creek that drains from Warm Springs Dam. And there are now gigantic gravel pits in this area, right in the underground flow of water coming down. Next. And here's that same aquifer. Here's Healdsburg up here. Here's the Wohler pumps and the Rainey collectors down here. These are wells. Here's a giant gravel pit that was dug right next to these wells. These are gravel pits that form almost a complete block across the river to slow down the flow of water underground flow of water. And these giant pits up here are now being expanded. Next. This is called a Rainey collector, R-A-N-N-E-Y. And it's a marvelous apparatus that goes down about 70 or 80 feet in the gravel and has two big pumps in it, and then pipes that go way out into the gravel at the bottom. And hydrostatic pressure pushes water into these collectors and then sucked upwards and then pumped into the system and delivered to 600,000 people in Marin and Sonoma County without any additional filtration. So this gravel is really one of the biggest assets that any county could ever have, or any water agency. Marin County doesn't have anything like it. They have to treat their water, and it costs a fortune to treat water. One more. Oh, I'm sorry, go back one. Professor Kondolf gave me this picture several years ago. This is taken back in the 1960s. Our ranch is down at the lower center, and there's Fitch Mountain up above there, and the Russian River goes around the back of that, and then you can see the meanders of the river.
That's 55 feet deep. That's it.
Pardon?
You said 55 feet in one of that.
Well, this is 55 feet deep. The mining firms dredged this channel right through the middle of the big meanders, and then now they're mining the meanders, and their terrace pits are in these meanders. Next. Pardon? Oh, yeah, it looks like a dollar sign, doesn't it? Next. This is the horror picture of the Russian River. These are gravel pits just below our ranch on the other side of the river. They're mined down 65, 70, some of them probably 100 feet deep. And here's the Russian River. And these huge lakes are gravel pits. You'd think they might transmit water and be helpful to the aquifer, but they don't. They get plugged with silt, and eventually just become sort of hanging ponds. And this is a mining operation right there. And about all that's left for a future well site is that vineyard there. That's been studied, but it's probably too small to put in a rainy collector. We used to buy our Cabernet grapes from the vineyard that was in the furthest pit. That's called the Benoit Pit, across the river, Joyce, right there. Next. And this is up on the Yuba River at the Malakoff diggings. There's a water cannon back there that are eroding the bluffs, and a lot of this will eventually ends up in the Sacramento River in the Suisun area, and into the bay. This was back in the 1880s, and this was finally stopped by lawsuit by some farmers, I think. And but tremendous amount of sediment was washed into the Yuba and into the Sacramento River. Next. These are the rainy collectors below the Wooler Bridge, and they have to get in there every year and scrape off the silt so they get enough filtration down into those big collectors that are down there 70 feet in the gravel. Next. And when it floods, which it often does, the Russian River is one of the highest repetitive flood areas in the West. Can you sharpen that a little? These are the big collectors. There's 3 of them, and the rainy collectors. And Mark West Creek comes in right opposite the upper one, and that brings wastewater from Santa Rosa, and it floods this big infiltration area that is below the Wooler Bridge for these three wells. There's the Russian River. Next. And it's hard to tell where the Russian River is anymore. This is supposed to be a navigable river and protected for all time, but the mining has left these giant pits all along there, and there's a potential for what's called pit capture, where a pit which is much deeper than the riverbed will the levee between it and the river will erode, and then the riverbed will flow into these gravel pits, and it'll deepen the river channel upriver and downriver, take out bridges, take out wells, and that's happened on a number of rivers in California. And of course, fish have a terrible time finding their way back upstream. Next. This is the Warm Springs Dam, which was built on Dry Creek in order to control the flooding on the Russian River. Actually, it made the river flood more because of the tremendous growth that followed the construction of the dam and the water supply that went with it. Next. Here's Guerneville during a flood. Next. And the river has been straightened all the way, for about 60, 70 miles. It's been straightened by gravel mining, and just straight as an arrow down by the Wohler Bridge. This is a dam that helps water infiltrate down through the gravel and into the collectors. Next. And here's the upper side of the Middle Reach Aquifer. Look at the mountain of gravel and sand up there. That's all taken out of one of these huge gravel pits that are just below where these people are fishing. This is a dam that had to be built here in order to protect Healdsburg's water supply. The riverbed has dropped 17 feet right at this spot, and the fish weren't able to get over this dam. This led to a lawsuit that went on for 11 years, and finally the county built a fish passage over this dam that you see there. Next. The only way you can see these huge dams and huge gravel pits and the damage they've done to the river is to rent one of these little helicopters. And this is a courageous reporter from the Healdsburg Tribune who did a story after, I think it was the 1995 or 1997 flood. Next. But here's Syar's huge big gravel pit called the Basalt Pit, and it ruptured its banks. They're just like brown sugar. They're very soft. But right next to it is Healdsburg's sewage treatment plant. And this plant escaped flooding by just 1 foot. And but the treated wastewater from this plant is stored in this huge gravel pit. And 800 million gallons of secondary treated effluent escaped into the Russian River, and that resulted in another lawsuit against Healdsburg to stop using this gravel pit for storage of water, because the sides are very porous, and you know darn well that the wastewater is going to get into the Russian River. Next. Tremendous bank erosion all along the Russian River and down cutting. And of course, when the river down cuts like this, your well water levels drop, and the roots of trees dry up, and bank swallows, which we used to have by the millions, have disappeared. And next. This bridge has been undermined, and you can see where the level of the creek bed of this is Dry Creek was. The same thing happened to the 101 bridge, a huge double bridge crossing the Russian River at Healdsburg. I got into there one day and I could see underneath the piers that were exposed by the dropping riverbed. And about 7 or 8 years ago, the Caltrans replaced that bridge at a cost of $11 million to the taxpayers, and they didn't charge the gravel industry anything for it. The taxpayers paid for that. Next. Twice now the river has been designated one of the most endangered and threatened rivers on the North American continent. And the effect on the vineyards is pretty dramatic. This is some of the finest Class 1 agricultural soils you'll find anywhere along this river bottom. And 2,000 acres of prime vineyards were designated for removal and for dredging gravel. We were able to knock that back by our lawsuits to around 800 acres is the max, which is still much too much. Next. Here's, there was some mining went on in the Alexander Valley just above this farmer's well. This is well out there in the middle of the river. And here's the irrigation pipes. The river used to be way out there, but the bank erosion has exposed that well. Next. Here's another farmer who planted too close to the riverbank. People don't realize that the water coming out of Lake Mendocino is what they call hungry water. It's starved for sediment, and so it gobbles up river banks as it moves along and causes bank erosion. Next. I've been involved in something like 15 different lawsuits in the past 25 to 30 years trying to bring gravel mining under control. And all the lawsuits are listed in the back of my book and the reasons for them. And there was mining without permits. There was accusations of price fixing. The grand jury got into the act, and in 1991 they did a whole year study of the gravel mining permit and monitoring, and found incredible amount of corruption, and that's all available to the public in the 1990 grand jury report. Next. Here's the source of most of the problems on the Russian River. This is the Santa Rosa Plain, and the outline of the dotted outline is the watershed of Santa Rosa Creek, and most of the construction in Santa Rosa, it takes place in this area, and all the darker areas are would have already been built on. Over on the left is the Laguna Santa Rosa, which used to be one of the largest freshwater lakes in California with tremendous wildlife. And then you can see that the laguna. Joyce, can you show that? Right there. There's the outlet to this laguna, which used to be a great flood storage retention or flood retention basin, but it's been filled up with silt. And all of the creeks on this whole plain, most of them have been channelized right into the laguna in order to make it simpler for developers to build. So, and then all the urban runoff from all of the development in this area, all the polluted roads and roadways and the runoff from roofs and whatnot, goes right out there in the laguna outflow, and that ends up right on top of the wells of the Sonoma County Water Agency. So the only thing that's saving Santa Rosa and its water supply is the depth of the gravel that remains. And there's no doubt that they're going to have to build an expensive water treatment plant to treat their water, drinking water, in the future. Next. Santa Rosa built a pipeline to the geysers, which is in the Mayacamas Range, just north of Santa Rosa. And this is a 43-mile pipeline. It's really an engineering marvel. And I think it's a 5-foot diameter pipeline that'll pump 19 million gallons a day of wastewater up to the geysers to recharge these steam fields. This is the largest geothermal field, I think, that's operating in the world. And Calpine operates well fields up there that create electricity. This system seems to be working right now. Next. And here's the tremendous growth we're experiencing in Sonoma County. This is called a cellular subdivision. There's just one entrance to that subdivision and one exit. Next. And this is the director of the Santa Rosa Sub-Regional Sewage Treatment Plant, and he's drinking some of his own treated drinking water. And I'm a public health officer, and I said, Miles, now we don't have to monitor the river, we'll just monitor you. This is one of the creeks. These used to be beautiful meandering oak-lined creeks that drained into the laguna, but they've been straightened. Yes. This is the laguna, what it used to look like before all the growth and development or erosion filled it up with silt. Yes. And here's the Marquest Creek, which drains Santa Rosa Plain. It's one of the most polluted creeks in the county, and it's the whole Santa Laguna Basin has been declared an impaired water body area. And so it looks like what's going to happen in the long run as they mine out the gravel, they're going to have to put in a water treatment plant, treat the drinking water for all these people, and most of the wastewater will be discharged into the Russian River at 10 different locations up and down the river where they built giant outfalls from their geysers pipeline. So I think the future for Sonoma County is that they're going to be drinking wastewater if they don't stop mining their aquifer. How much time do I have left? A few minutes. Next. We've done a lot to try and bring mining under control and to control this river and to develop a management plan for the Russian River. We had to sue the state of California in 1996. We sued the State Water Resources Control Board, the State Lands Commission, trying to get them to order a master plan for every river in California. And we were successful in that lawsuit. And a comprehensive management initiative has been mandated by the state of California for the Russian River and for every river system in California. And we've also gotten a lot of grants to try and help restore the fisheries of the Russian River. This is a picture showing two of our congressmen, Woolsey and what's his name? Dan Hamburg. And we tried to get new people elected to the Board of Supervisors who would have more sensitivity toward the wildlife and the fish of the Russian River. And Laurel Marcus, who's the woman right there, did a master plan for the Russian River, a Russian River enhancement plan, which cost the State Coastal Conservancy $300,000. And it came up with probably the best plan we've seen for managing the Russian River, but it was killed by the mining firms. Okay? And we've brought hundreds of people to the Russian River to teach them about the wonders of their river and how to protect it. Okay? Our big fear is that the Eel River will be mined next, and the mining has already started down toward the mouth, and these gravel bars are really priceless assets of the river. Next. Here's the diversion of water from the Eel River to the Russian River. That's an entrance to a tunnel that goes through the mountains about 1 mile, and it's at a slope, and it goes through a generator. It generates a little electricity, but hardly enough to do very much. And this dam has been filled with silt, and this is something that we're trying to get rid of. Next. Here's this Cape Horn Dam. Just at the top, you can see that big water diversion. But this water that you see coming out of this tunnel is all the water that is going down the main fork of the Eel at certain times of the year. And this used to be ice-cold water that was made the eel one of the great fisheries of the world. And it's just devastated the fishery. Next. Here's a dam that stores water for diversion through that tunnel, and comes from the Snow Mountains up above. That's all wilderness area and national forest and should be protected. But this dam is filling up with, this reservoir is filling up with silt and has a very high mercury content. Next. Here's the water coming out of Coyote Dam, which is sediment starved and warmed by going through Potter Valley and loaded with nutrients, and it's harmed the Russian River. Next. And one of the great successes of all the battles for the North Coast is all those red areas you see are rivers that would have been dammed if it hadn't been for a lot of people who fought these dams and got them stopped. Next. And a man from Marin County, Senator Peter Baer, was the one who first got state wild and scenic river status for the Smith, the Trinity, the Klamath, and the Eel River. But he wasn't able to get it for the Russian. We're still hopeful that maybe the Russian can someday be included in this, and it's now a National Wild and Scenic River Program. Next. And I'm happy to say that the east shore of Tomales Bay, which would have had 150,000 people living up there, is now preserved in almost its entirety, and this is part of our Audubon Canyon Ranch Tomales Bay Preserve on Tomales Bay. Thank you very much. Pardon?
Can you take some questions?
Oh, sure.
All right.
Good to see you after about a decade. I had the opportunity to share your 75th birthday hike on the coast walk along the Lost Coast, John Steer.
Oh, have you been on the coast walk?
Yeah, with you.
Oh, that's right.
Over a decade ago now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's good to see you again. Anyway, isn't there any controls of late, or that you've tried to bring about, the Friends of the Russian River, using the Endangered Species Act or any of the existing federal regulatory systems to try to, through permitting or violation of existing permits, whether it's through Section 401 or Section 404 water permits or the Endangered Species Act? Are there any mechanisms you try to use to restrict gravel mining?
We tried everything, and as long as the supervisors control gravel mining and the water supply system, it's very hard to get any of the agencies to take their responsibility seriously. The State Lands Commission owns the beds of all the rivers in California, and they own it up to the ordinary high water mark under the doctrine of public trust. And we're very hopeful that they would step in and protect the Russian River, and we've filed public trust lawsuits trying to get them to enforce their jurisdiction over the beds of the banks of the Russian River and other rivers. But it's very political, and Governor Gray Davis was very active on the State Lands Commission. We thought when he became governor that he would really step in and protect these rivers, but it didn't happen. As far as Fish and Game is concerned, they're our biggest allies, and the restoration of salmon habitat on the Russian River is proceeding pretty good. There are 401 permits. Is that what they are? 401. Yeah, we've had a lot of trouble with them. Stream bank alteration permits.
Yes, sir. Sonoma County has a conflict in a sense that Board of Supervisors is the Sonoma County Water Agency, and they're also the redevelopment people, and they're also the, there's one other field that they oversee. So my question is, they make money off development, and those developers like to see more gravel being mined. So do you think there's any hope that people in Sonoma County could actually slow down this process of mining out the river, or are we pretty much just going to have to let this happen the way it's been continuing?
Well, Sonoma County is a huge county and has so many different cities and different jurisdictions, but we all depend upon the water supply from the Russian River. And I'm sorry, I didn't get the main part of your question.
Well, there's a new state law, Senate Bill 610. It says all jurisdictions have to say what they're going to do with their water supply, a water supply assessment for the next 20 years. It would appear, there's been some lawsuits about this, it would appear that the county supervisors don't really care about actually having a good water supply. They're more interested in helping development. How can people in Sonoma County actually slow down the gravel mining of the river?
Well, we've thought about that. It might take an initiative to make it work. We found that the grand jury investigation and all their recommendations didn't work. And so I think the next step would be an initiative that would just prohibit gravel mining in any aquifer that the public depended on for drinking water. Byron Scher, who was state senator about 5 years ago, introduced a bill in the state legislature that would have done just that. And I've got a copy of the bill, but it was killed within a month by the mining firms. They just went all out to lobby against it.
So is anybody working to make an initiative right now? Is anyone working on an initiative in Sonoma County right now?
No, there aren't. That would be a good project for you.
Yes. Who actually owns this gravel? And how does
I can hear you better without that.
Okay. Who actually owns the gravel? I mean, when the gravel is in the stream, who actually owns it?
Well, the public actually owns it according to the doctrine of public trust. It's in the stream bed of a navigable river, and the state of California adopted this public trust back in 1850, and they own theoretically all of the tidelands and ocean frontage and all of the rivers of California that are navigable. And so what's happened though is that just like here on Richardson Bay down in Marin County, that was subdivided into little lots and then sold off by the state and to raise money to help build the state capitol back in the 1860s. And same thing happened along the Russian River. There was a lot of subdivisions that went right into the river. On our ranch, we owned the river, and but we didn't own it, and we were just trustees of it. And so it's up to the county supervisors, I think, in each county to establish a precedent for protecting the public trust. And certainly the public's water supply would be the highest priority in protecting a public trust. Did I answer your question?
Well, I'm interested in the fact that in many ways, it's our gravel. It's not their gravel.
Right.
And doesn't any citizen have standing under the public trust to come forward and sue?
Well, do the fish have standing?
Yeah. Well, no, well, given what happened in Hawaii, with the Waihole decision, which used California law as a precedent, they established a underlying obligation of the state to protect the ecological integrity of the water resource.
Right.
And you'd think that California being as advanced as it is, that we'd be able to do that too.
We have, from time to time, we've had excellent attorney generals in the state of California who've gone after people who have illegally mined gravel. And I have here a notice that appeared in the San Francisco Examiner. State Lands Commission says there are 30 illegal mining operations on the state river, on North Coast rivers that they would like to stop. And they have sicked the Attorney General on some of those and stopped it, but it's sort of the Wild West out there. The other thing that is pretty interesting, we got the, in one of our lawsuits, we got the Daily Journal, San Francisco Daily Journal, serving the Bay Area legal community since 1883, to send one of their best investigative reporters up to study the gravel situation on the Russian River and why it was so poorly regulated and why there was so much illegal mining. And they were going to come and spend 24 hours. Well, they spent 24 days investigating all the illegal activities along the Russian River. And this is a wonderful summary of the legal aspects of mining on the Russian River. And it says, from grapes to gravel, battle is brewing between Sonoma miners and vintners. Well, one of our lawsuits involved 15 wineries. We got them to be defendants, or to help file this lawsuit against the county and the mining firms. And we win our lawsuits, but the county just orders another environmental impact report, rubber stamps it, and gives them permits, and they're off again. And Dr. Kondoff is an expert on the impacts of gravel mining, in-stream gravel mining on lowering the riverbed. And you want to say anything about that? Yeah.
There are lots of consultants involved in getting permits and preparing arms and EIRs, and I wonder if you could comment on your experience with consultants and their completeness and truthfulness in your time following decisions.
Well, the first thing when you file a lawsuit against the mining firm is to have a good attorney. And so we always interview attorneys and try and find somebody who's passionate about the river. And then they'll often bring in consultants to advise us. And Dr. Kondoff has been a consultant, and Dr. Curry down at Santa Cruz has been a consultant. And they've helped us a great deal in seeing the scientific aspects of river protection. And some of the consultants are not too great. The mining firms consultants, they're there to protect the mining firms.
I would think that one of the problems might be the Corps of Engineers, which isn't very friendly to nature, because, as you mentioned, navigable streams, which the river is, isn't that under the Corps' jurisdiction? And wouldn't that unfortunately supersede the local county and town entities?
You'd think that the Corps of Engineers would have the jurisdiction over these rivers, but they seem to change their officers so much, and I've been involved with the Corps of Engineers in numerous battles, and just as you get one up to speed, he's transferred somewhere else. And the Corps of Engineers built the 2 dams on the Russian River, so you'd think that they would be interested in protecting them and protecting the water supply. But they've helped some, but not too much. We do have a citizens group now called it's working on a Russian River management plan, and they've tried to bring together the Corps of Engineers and the Fish and Game people, and they put out a regular bulletin called the Russian River Bulletin. You may want to get a hold of that, or you. This is the best advancement we've had toward a Russian River management plan. But until we get the mining firms out of the river, we aren't going to get very far.
Yes, I was wondering about the Russian River Watershed Council that you were mentioning.
Pardon?
I was wondering about the Russian River Watershed Council
Oh, yeah.
and its attempt to create this comprehensive watershed management plan that it sounds like you were involved in creating a precedent for. What is the actual regulatory power of a comprehensive watershed management plan? I mean, how can they actually regulate gravel interests?
Well, they don't really have much teeth right now. And the one agency that could regulate the Russian River and really do a marvelous job is the Sonoma County Water Agency. They're a powerful organization. They have unlimited resources and money, and selling water to 9 different contractors. They have really a deep responsibility to protect the river and its water system. And they've got millions, hundreds of millions of dollars invested in water systems and in their rainy collectors at the Wooler Bridge. But who's their boss? It's the county supervisors. And they're all elected office supervisors, and they're re-elected every 4 years. And the mining firms make darn sure that they get somebody on the planning commission who is sympathetic toward their needs. And the planning commission, of course, is appointed by the Board of Supervisors. So the whole system is sort of stacked in favor of mining. And there was a big mining hearing last week, 2 weeks ago, and Sire had applied to mine another 50 acres of vineyards, and they rubber stamped it. The Planning Commission just approved it without hardly any discussion, and the supervisors, they went into great lengths to discuss gravel mining and the philosophy of gravel mining. And there were a lot of us there who were upset about their decision to let this pit go ahead. But one of the women who's the Board of Supervisors said, we're in competition with all the other counties in California for gravel. Gravel is our biggest concern. Water is not our main concern. And Sonoma County has always felt they had plenty of water. So gravel is sort of king. It's sort of driving growth in California. And California, as you know, is growing at 600,000 people every year. Every one of us, every one of you uses about 7 tons of gravel on the average. for the infrastructure, as your share of the infrastructure of California, and the housing and the roads and all of that. So we're all in this together, and it's a tough thing to stop. And the head of this Hansen mining firm, that's one of the big mining firms on the Russian River, Lord Hansen from London, has moved his operations, I understand, down to Palm Springs because he says California is going to be the largest producer of aggregate in the world. And it won't be just for roads and stuff. They'll build pre-stressed concrete trusses and ship them all over the world. And so and 3/4 of the gravel that's used in California now is taken out of rivers. And it could be taken out of hard rock quarries. It only costs $1 more a ton to take it out of hard rock quarries, but it's cheaper to take it out of rivers that are close to where the cities are.
Thanks very much.